The storm did not roar from the skies, but rumbled in the heart of the village, where Osei stood beneath the ancient tree. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, waiting for them, waiting for the crows. The air grew thick, charged with something, ominous, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. And then, one by one, the crows began to arrive. Their dark forms swooped across the sky, cutting through the stillness, their calls slicing the air with a sharpness that felt unnatural. The birds filled the heavens, black against the dying light, and Osei's heart raced. This was no ordinary gathering. Their presence was a signal, a warning that something terrible was stirring. The healer, Mama Titi, stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she watched Osei's unwavering gaze. She could sense it in the way he stood, his body tense, his eyes locked on the circling birds. "Osei, do you hear them?" she asked, her voice low, edged with concern. Osei did not look at her. He did not need to. The crows spoke to him, and he understood. Their calls were not random. They carried a message. "I hear them," he whispered, his voice steady. "They are telling us that something is coming, something we must face." Mama Titi stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "What are they saying, child?" "They are warning us. They always do. But this time, it is different." Osei's voice faltered for the briefest moment, a shadow of doubt crossing his face. "They carry a dark message, a betrayal. It is near." The crows circled, their calls growing louder, more frantic. Something had changed. Their erratic behavior signaled more than just unease. It was a sign of something deeper, something more sinister. Osei's heart pounded in his chest as he felt the weight of the message. He could no longer ignore it. In the distance, a figure moved. Osei's eyes flicked to the edge of the village, where the trees gave way to the open path. A dark figure stood, watching. The figure's presence was unsettling, their silhouette barely visible in the fading light. Osei's instincts flared. This was no ordinary villager. This was someone from the shadows, someone whose past was tied to the heart of the village's secrets. Mama Titi noticed the shift in his focus. Her eyes followed his gaze, and she too sensed the gravity of the moment. "Do you see it, Osei? The Watcher?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. Osei nodded slowly, never breaking his gaze. "I see them," he said. "I have seen them before, but not like this. Their presence. It is not a coincidence." Mama Titi's brow furrowed. She had always known the boy had a connection to the unknown, to the spirits of the land. But this was something darker. She placed a hand on his arm, her voice trembling. "You must be careful, child. This place is filled with secrets, and some of them are buried deep beneath all that we hold dear." The crow's calls intensified, echoing like a chorus of voices from beyond. Osei's heart quickened. "It's time," he said softly, as if the words were not his own. "The moment has arrived. The betrayal is near." In the distance, the figure stepped closer, their movements slow, deliberate. Osei felt the air grow colder as the shadow drew nearer. The crows circled above, their wings beating with a rhythm that matched the rising tension in the village. Everything was converging. The past, the secrets, the betrayal. It was all coming to a head. The figure, now fully visible, revealed itself as one of the village's own, a person whose face Osei had seen in passing, but never truly noticed. The figure had always been there, lingering at the edges of the village, a part of the community but never fully embraced. Osei could feel the weight of their dark past, something long buried, waiting to resurface. He took a step forward, his mind racing with the knowledge that this encounter would set in motion events that could change everything. The crows' warning was clear, their presence undeniable. The truth was waiting, hidden in the shadows, ready to be revealed. The figure's eyes locked onto Osei's. A fleeting moment of recognition passed between them. Two souls bound by an unspoken understanding. The time for secrets was over. The village held its breath. The storm within the heart of the land about to break. What would come next? Only the crows knew. The villagers spoke in whispers, their voices low as they cast furtive glances toward Osei. His bond with the crows was unlike anything they had ever seen, and though they did not understand it, they knew it was a power that ran deep. The crows never strayed from him. They circled above, their calls unmistakable, echoing warnings that only he seemed to hear. The birds held secrets, truths too dangerous for any other ear, and they shared them, only with him. Mama Titi had always cared for him with tenderness, but as he grew, she also watched him closely. She had raised him after his parents' untimely death, and she feared the child who could hear the crows would one day have to face the darkness hidden within his own blood. She tried to shelter him, to protect him from the power stirring within him. But deep down, she knew the truth. The power had always been there. His connection to the crows wasn't a mere accident. The blood that flowed through Osei's veins was tied to ancient spirits. The elders had whispered about it, telling stories of his lineage, of the spirits that had once spoken to the first ancestors of Mbali, and how those voices had been passed down through the generations. Before all the darkness came, Osei had been just a boy full of laughter, with a spirit as free as the wind. He had been a child like any other, carefree and unaware of the hidden forces that surrounded him. He spent his days chasing birds and laughing with the other children. But that was before the night that took his innocence away, before the blood-soaked darkness that would forever change the course of his life. It was a night filled with screams, the sound of metal against flesh, and the echo of something far more sinister. He remembered the eyes of his parents as they fell, the heavy silence that followed, and the weight of a secret that no one spoke of in daylight. That night had stolen the light from his eyes, and with it, the boy he had once been. Mama Tite saw the change in him. She had raised him with care, but her warning was always the same. Osei, not all the crows say the truth. Some words are meant to be unheard. Their messages, though powerful, come with a cost. She spoke from a place of knowing, a place of wisdom, too deep for Osei to fully grasp. Her warning hung in the air, but Osei had always listened to the crows, and now their calls carried an urgency he could not ignore. The crows, once calm, grew more restless. They were calling with a new message. Osei felt their presence like a weight on his chest. The birds were no longer content with the quiet whispers of the past. They spoke of something more, something dark and dangerous that was beginning to stir within the village. Osei knew the village, once peaceful and harmonious, was on the verge of unraveling. Beneath the surface, tensions were building, long-buried secrets shifting like shadows in the dark. Rumors had begun to spread about the Kamis family, a wealthy and influential family tied to the colonizers. Whispers in the village spoke of deals struck in the dead of night, of pacts made in exchange for power, land, and influence. The crows, ever watchful, seemed to warn of something more, a betrayal, a secret so dangerous that even the birds hesitated to speak of it fully. What lay hidden was more than just a business deal or a betrayal. It was something that threatened to tear apart the very foundation of their world. Osei, with his unique connection to the crows, was no longer just an observer. He had become a player in the unfolding mystery. The crows sensing his role, whispered of his duty, to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. They had given him a gift, one that could change the course of history. But Osei had begun to realize that the truth he was about to uncover would demand a heavy price. In the days that followed, Osei felt the weight of the crow's warnings. He had always known there were secrets, but now he understood that those secrets were about to be revealed in ways that no one could predict. The village's quiet harmony was crumbling, and with it, the life Osei had known. But the crows were calling, and he knew that soon the truth would come to light, one way or another. The whispers of the Kami's family's dark deal had not been enough to shake the village, but Osei was beginning to understand what they had been hiding. He was not merely a listener of secrets, he was the key to unlocking them. The crows had chosen him for a reason. They were waiting for him to act, and as the days wore on, Osei knew he had no choice but to listen, to uncover the dark pact that threatened to destroy everything. The crows' restless calls sliced through the still air, their wings beating like a drum, setting Osei's heart racing. He knew they were trying to tell him something that would shift the world beneath his feet. The birds circled above him, drawing closer, their cries growing louder. His mind swirled with unease. The crows never came without a purpose, and today their warning was undeniable. The whispers had started weeks ago, faint at first, but now the rumors were louder, carried on the winds and through the murmurs of villagers. The Kami's family, once regarded with respect, now seemed to carry an air of mystery, their involvement in strange dealings growing clearer. Osei's mind raced as he pieced together the fragmented whispers. The Kamis, with their ties to the colonizers, had played a role in his parents' death. Though the tragedy had been buried in the past, the crows were now revealing the truth, and Osei's heart burned with the knowledge that his parents had been victims of a cruel game. Tensions were rising within the village, a quiet anger bubbling just beneath the surface. The once united community of Mbali had started to fray. The elders gathered in secret, their voices tight with worry. The Kamis, with their wealth and connections, were becoming a growing threat. The outside forces, foreign powers eager to claim land and resources, had found allies in the Kamis. What had once been a small, peaceful village was now a battleground between the past and a future controlled by those who sought to divide it. Osei could feel the weight of this growing unrest. The more he learned, the more he understood the danger his village faced. The Kamis were playing a deadly game, a game that threatened not just the village's peace, but its very existence. Their dealings with the colonizers had put everyone in jeopardy, and Osei realized that his role in this battle was no longer just to listen. He had to act. Mama Titi, sensing the shift in Osei, watched him closely. She had raised him, knowing that his power, though great, was also dangerous. But now she saw him changing. The boy who had once laughed and played in the village was now a young man with a purpose. The crows, ever present, had chosen him for something greater. She knew it was time to confront the Kamis, to uncover the truth that had been buried for so long. But she also knew that such a confrontation would come at a cost. She warned him, as she always had. Not all truths are meant to be uncovered. Osei! Some things are better left in the shadows. But Osei was resolute. The crows had spoken, and they were urging him forward. The truth could no longer remain hidden. After hearing their cryptic warnings, Osei made his decision. He would confront the Kami's family and force them to reveal the truth, no matter the consequences. As he prepared to leave the village under the cover of night, a figure appeared at the edge of the settlement. Osei's heart skipped a beat. It was Nia, the daughter of the Kamis, the girl who had once been a friend, a beacon of kindness in his otherwise turbulent life. But now, as the village's secrets began to unravel, Osei wasn't sure where Nia's loyalties lay. Had she, too, been swept up in her family's dark web? Was she complicit in her family's betrayals? His mind raced with doubt, but as she stepped closer, their eyes met, both unsure of what the future would hold. "Nia!" Osei called out, his voice filled with uncertainty. "What are you doing here?" Nia's gaze shifted, her face unreadable. "You don't understand, Osei," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You cannot walk the path you're heading down. It's too late for both of us." Osei's heart raced. Was she warning him? Or was she trying to stop him? "I have to uncover the truth, Nia. I have no choice." Her expression softened, but the tension remained in the air. "The truth will destroy everything," she said quietly. "It's not just about your parents. It's about the future of this village, my family, my father. They've already decided what will happen next." Confusion and anger welled up inside Osei. Nia, who had once been his ally, now seemed to be part of the very forces he sought to expose. He couldn't understand it. The girl he had trusted was now standing between him and the truth. He turned and began to walk toward the Kami's estate, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He didn't know what he would find when he reached the heart of the Kami's family's land, but he knew it would change everything. He was no longer just a listener of the crow's calls. He was a man on a mission, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. As he neared the estate, Nia's footsteps followed him, quiet but persistent. "You don't know what you're walking into," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Osei did not turn to face her. He couldn't. He had already made up his mind. The secrets, the lies, everything would be exposed. He would face the Kami's family and demand the truth, and he would not stop until he had it. The path to the truth was tangled in shadows, and Osei knew he was about to uncover something so powerful that it could change the fate of the village forever. But in that moment, with Nia at his side, Osei could not foresee just how deep the secrets ran, or how much he would lose in the process. Osei stepped onto the Kami's estate, his feet heavy with the weight of the truth that burned inside him. He had come for answers, and he knew there would be no turning back. The crows had spoken, and now the time had come to face the family that had brought his world to its knees. Every step he took felt like an echo of the past, of the secrets buried beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed. As Osei moved deeper into the estate, a shadow shifted in the corner of his vision. He stopped. From the darkness, Nia emerged, her figure as familiar as the voice in his mind, but her presence now unsettling. The girl he had once known was no longer the same. Her eyes, filled with something Osei couldn't place, bore into him. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice trembling, her body stiff with fear. "You don't know what you're walking into." Her warning was clear, but the fear in her eyes told him more than words could say. Osei stood tall, undeterred, his voice steady. "I know what the crows have whispered, Nia. I know the truth. I know what your family has done." Nia flinched at his words, her gaze flickering with something she tried to hide. For a moment there was a silence between them, thick with unspoken thoughts, until she spoke again, her voice low and fragile. "You think you know, but you don't. The truth, it's darker than you can imagine." She hesitated, her breath catching in her throat. "I never wanted this, Osei, but it was never up to me." Osei's chest tightened. What could she mean? Was she trying to protect him, Or was this her way of keeping him from the truth? He couldn't be certain, but the crows had called him here, and their warning would not go unheeded. The crows' cries grew louder, filling the air with an urgency Osei could not ignore. Their calls were deafening now, like a chorus from another world, stirring something deep within him. The ground beneath him seemed to vibrate, an ancient energy rising. The birds weren't just signaling danger, they were calling to him, urging him to awaken to something beyond the present. He felt it then. A strange warmth spreading through his body, a surge of power that rippled through him like a current of life itself. It was as if the earth had risen to meet him, wrapping him in its energy. Osei stood still, letting the force flow through him, the warmth coursing through his veins. A connection to something ancient, something forgotten. The truth surged within, him as well, bursting forth like a dam breaking. In that moment, Osei knew everything. His parents' death had not been an accident. The Kamis family had orchestrated it. Nia, the girl who once held his trust, was not just a bystander. She was at the center of it all. His world, the foundation of his life, had been built on lies. Nia's face crumpled. Her eyes filled with regret as she finally spoke the words Osei had been dreading. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she whispered. "I never wanted to be part of it, but my family, they made a pact I had no choice but to honor." Her voice trembled with guilt, a burden that had weighed her down for as long as she could remember. "The Kamis family has been tied to the colonizers," she continued, her words heavy with shame. "My father, my brother, they did it to gain power, to secure our place in this world. And when your parents tried to stop them, they were eliminated. They were in the way." Osei's heart clenched in pain, anger bubbling beneath the surface. The girl he had once called a friend had been forced to carry the weight of a pact made in darkness. She had been complicit, even though she had never wanted it. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound he had known. The crows continued to cry out, their voices now a chorus of triumph, as if they too understood that the time for secrets had passed. The truth had been exposed. There was no going back now. Nia dropped to her knees, her face pale with the weight of her confession. "I never wanted to betray you," she said, her voice a whisper. "But now it's too late. The pact is done. The truth is out, and we must face what's to come." Osei stood over her, his heart heavy with the truth he had uncovered. The village, his family, the land. Everything was about to change. The secrets of the Kamis family had come to light, and the consequences of those secrets would ripple through everything Osei had known. The betrayal, the lies, the dark pact. It all led to this moment. The moment of reckoning had arrived. What happens now? Osei's voice was firm, but inside his heart was torn. The past had led him to this point, and now he had to decide what to do with the truth he had uncovered. The village, the Kamis, Nia. Everything was at a crossroads. There could be no peace until the cost of justice had been paid. Nia, broken and vulnerable, looked up at him, her eyes filled with resignation. "You decide," she whispered. "The truth is now in your hands." The news of the Kamis family's betrayal spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the village. The whispers started low, like the first murmur of a storm. But soon the tension in the air grew thick. People gathered, their faces filled with disbelief and rage. They had trusted the Kamis family, respected them for their wealth and influence. But now, with the truth exposed, there was no room for forgiveness. The community that had once been united began to fracture. The village, once calm and peaceful, was now a powder keg ready to explode. Justice! Justice must be done! The cries grew louder as the villagers turned their anger toward the Kami's family. They demanded retribution for the wrongs done, for the blood that had been spilled in the name of power and greed. The very foundations of the village were shaking under the weight of the revelation. The Kami's family, once held in high regard, now stood at the center of shame. The wealth and power that had once protected them were no longer enough to shield them from the consequences of their actions. The colonizers, their dark ties now laid bare, had used the Kami's family to further their own interests, and the people of the village could no longer ignore it. The Kami's family, ostracized and condemned, was left to face the fury of those they had betrayed. In the midst of the chaos, Osei stood, his mind torn. He had uncovered the truth, but now the weight of that truth threatened to crush him. Anger, guilt, and a desire for peace warred within him. He had never asked for leadership, yet now the villagers looked to him. They needed a guide, someone to lead them through the storm. Osei, reluctant and unsure, stepped forward. The villagers silenced their cries for a moment, waiting for him to speak. "I know your anger," Osei said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "But we must not let this destroy us. We have faced betrayal, but we cannot let it break the bonds that have kept us together. We must stand strong, together. Justice will come, but it must be measured." His words were heavy, the weight of leadership bearing down on him. He had uncovered the truth, but now he was responsible for the path forward. The villagers needed him, and though he was uncertain, Osei knew he could not turn back. He had to guide them, no matter the cost. Above them, the crows continued to watch, their eyes sharp and unblinking. Their presence had always been a part of the village, their calls guiding Osei through dark times. But now their watchful eyes seemed filled with a deeper sadness. As the village spiraled into chaos, the crows, ever present, observed in silence. They were the keepers of secrets, but even they seemed to understand the cost of the truth that had come to light. As the days passed, the village's anger began to simmer down, but the damage had been done. Nia, the girl who had once been Osei's ally, disappeared into the jungle. She could no longer remain in a place where the secrets of her family had been exposed. The village, once her home, had become a place of shame for her. Osei never saw her again, though he wondered where the burden of her family's past would take her. The village slowly began to heal. The wounds of betrayal were deep, but time had a way of mending even the most broken of hearts. Life returned to some semblance of normalcy. The elders gathered again, and the children played in the fields. But the scars of the betrayal remained, etched into the very fabric of the community. And Osei, who had once been just another child in the village, now carried a weight heavier than any crown. He had uncovered the truth, but that truth had come at a cost. The crows, once his guides, had given him a gift far beyond what he had understood. The power to change the future was now in his hands, but it was a power that would never come without sacrifice. Osei reflected on what had happened, on the people he had lost, and the choices he had made. Was it worth it? The questions plagued him, gnawing at his mind. The village had been saved from the Kami's family's corruption, but the path had been a hard one, filled with loss and heartbreak. The truth had shaped the future, but Osei knew that nothing would ever be the same. As the days passed and the village began to heal, Osei found himself standing on the precipice of a new beginning. The crows, ever watchful, circled above, their cries a reminder of the power they had given him. But Osei knew that the cost of that power was not something he could easily escape. The future was his to shape, but with it came a responsibility that would weigh on him for the rest of his life. And so the cycle continued. The village would heal, but the scars would remain. Osei had changed the course of history, but the question lingered. Was the price of the truth worth the world that would be rebuilt in its wake? The crows, ever silent, would continue to watch, and Osei would continue to lead. But the echoes of what had been uncovered would never fade. Osei stood at the crossroads of his past and future. The weight of the truth that had come to light hung heavily on his shoulders. The past, filled with betrayal and pain, called to him, yet the future, uncertain and full of possibility, pulled him forward. He felt the tension between them, the struggle that many before him had faced, to honor the old ways, to remember the past, and to step into the unknown, where new choices awaited. The crows had spoken, their cries urging him forward, but the path ahead was not one of ease. He would have to choose. The knowledge he now carried was both a gift and a curse. Some secrets were never meant to be unearthed, but Osei had dug deep. The betrayal of his parents was no accident. It was orchestrated, buried in the dark dealings of the Kamis family, whose pact with the colonizers had poisoned everything. It was a truth too painful to ignore, but Osei knew it had to be faced, no matter the cost. I didn't ask for this, Osei muttered to himself, the words heavy on his lips. But I will not let their lies consume us. The burden of the truth pressed him forward, though every step was fraught with the uncertainty of what would come next. Justice was not a simple thing. It was messy, complicated, and often costly. Osei had learned this the hard way. The moment he decided to uncover the truth, he had set into motion a chain of events that would change everything. His village, once united in peace, was now divided, torn apart by the revelations he had brought to light. The Kamis family had been cast down, but the price of justice was high. What was left in the wake of truth? Could peace be restored? Or had the very fabric of their community been torn beyond repair? Osei could not undo what had been done. The past was like a fire, its ashes still smoldering, ready to ignite at the smallest spark. He had stirred the past, reminded the people of the history that had been buried, and now that history was breathing again, louder than ever. The elders, the villagers, all felt the weight of what had happened. No one could move forward without acknowledging the past, but no one could stay there either. The future awaited, but it would not come easily. The crows watched, their cries echoing in the distance, like a constant reminder of the price of knowledge. They had always been with him, guiding him, whispering warnings that were often ignored. But now, Osei understood them in a way he never had before. Their message was simple. The truth could not be undone, and the consequences would follow. The question remained. What would Osei do with that knowledge? As the days passed, Osei realized that he now held a power greater than he had ever imagined. His actions had changed the course of his world, but with that power came a responsibility he was not sure he was ready for. To change the future meant to bear the weight of it, to carry the knowledge of what would happen next, and to guide others through it. With power came sacrifice, and Osei was beginning to understand what that sacrifice would be. The crows continued to circle, their cries louder, more insistent. They were waiting, watching, as if urging him to act. But what could he do? The truth had been revealed. The village had been changed. The Kamis family had fallen. But would that bring peace? Would it heal the wounds or deepen them? Osei was left to decide. The truth was before him. The crows had spoken, but the final decision was his. Would he listen to the warnings, or would he turn away? It was his choice, and his alone. In the quiet moments that followed, Osei stood at the edge of his village, looking out at the land he had always known. The sun was setting, and he knew the world he once understood was gone. The future was not what it had been, and neither was he. The power to change had always been in his hands, but it had come at a cost he had yet to fully understand. The journey had reshaped him. His understanding of power, betrayal, and justice had transformed. Osei knew one thing for certain. The world he now faced would never be the same. The village would heal, but it would be different. And Osei, the boy who had once been carefree and unaware, would never again be the same. He had changed the course of his world, but now it was up to him to decide what that world would become. The crows, ever watchful, were waiting for him to act, but Osei understood now. It was not just the crows who had to listen. It was everyone. The future was in their hands, and it was a future that would require them all to choose.